This video is going to cover deadheading shrubs and perennials. And I'm starting off with a plant called Salvia clevelandii. It's the end of its bloom cycle. These flowers are all dead and they're only going to look worse with time. So what we want to do is come in and remove the entire stem that is going to turn brown whether it's removed or not, and lower it down to the foliage level where the plant is better looking. So here I'm using a pair of shears to really do the bulk of the work right up front, and then once I've done that I'm going to go in and detail that. Now this is different for every plant, and a lot of the flowering shrubs, the way I like to treat them is go in and do the heavy work really quickly, clean off the top, and then once I've done that I'll go in and detail out these hard cuts like you see here. You see how it's been sheared off on top. That's kind of rough looking, and then I'll go in, as you'll see in a few minutes, and I'll start to remove some of the rough spots on top and make it look a little softer and more even on top. So that's how I like to prune evergreen shrubs that have that heavy bloom over the top. Another variety is Spirea Anthony Waterer. This does a very heavy bloom and then they turn brown, as you can see here. So what I'm doing here for visual effect, because the rest of the summer I want the plant to look good, is I'm just selectively pruning off the top here. You can also shear this one like we did the previous one and then detail it. There's just different ways to handle this, and I'm just hand detailing this one because that's the way I like to handle this plant. The next one we have is Chrysanthemum, and this is a dwarf variety called Esther Reed, and you can either come in like I'm doing by hand here and selectively remove the dead ones so you leave behind the few remaining white flowers, or as you're going to see in a moment, you can come in with shears and just make quick work of this. Now, if you're going to do that, you either have to wait for all of the flowers to turn totally brown, or you're going to have to give up some of the white ones as part of the deal. And here you can see with the shears, I just go in and level this thing, so it takes a matter of about a minute to do the entire plant. And then I'll come in. These stems, by the way, once they're cut or once they're done, they turn brown. So what you want to do is go in, and once you've cut them down, selectively find those stems and cut them as deep as you can, because they're going to turn brown and they're unsightly if you leave them behind and they leave this brown stubble behind. This is Jupiter's beard that you see here. This plant, like many perennials and especially annuals, will go to seed if you let the flowers stay around. So if you have a plant that wants to go to seed, you want to come in here, and you see that I'm cutting well below the foliage level so that you don't see the cut, and gets rid of the flowering stalk as well as the flower that's going to go to seed. This is a very common shrub, or perennial. This is daylily. And daylily, the scape or the flowering stem turns brown once it's done blooming. And you see a lot of people now are starting to cut the plant all the way to the ground. It's not necessary. You can just cut the flowering stalk right down to the base and you're left with the green plant behind. This is a newer form of dwarf butterfly bush, and these rebloom, but the old flowers stay dead on the plant, so I don't like the unsightly brown color, so I'm selectively pruning these off with being careful not to remove the buds of the next round of bloom. So that's how I deadhead. That's Buddleia blue chip. And then the last one, which is a very common plant that we use in design, is carpet roses. This is white Midland carpet rose. What I do, if I don't have gloves especially, is I pick it up by the end of a flower bud that's dead, and there's a lot of deadheads on this plant. I try and cut well below the foliage level so that the cut is not obvious to the eye. I'm also cutting down deeply enough to where, since this is going to rebloom, I'm cutting down to a stem that's at least as thick as a pencil to make sure that there's a big enough branch to support the next round of bloom for this plant. And that's basic deadheading. It applies to a number of different flowering plants, and if you didn't see the plant in here that you're used to dealing with, I think you can still apply the general rules. It's not that complicated, but it sure makes the plant look a lot better after a heavy bloom.